So just a quick overview, our software solutions, when I started at Logitech, I think the only piece of software that we had for our VC products was Logitech camera settings, believe it or not. I don't know how many of you on the call remember Logitech camera settings, but feel free to chime in the chat if you do. We've come a long way since that, and I've been here 5 years. So CollabOS, Sync, Tune are all relatively new, but also enterprise level software solutions. So of course, we're going to be focusing on Logitech Sync today. Not so much Tune, although Tune does integrate your personal workspace devices with Sync Portal. And of course, CollabOS has the Sync app built into it, right? Which is nice. We're going to be focusing mostly on the Sync Portal today. I like this slide just because it gives you a quick overview. If you look down below, you can see all the different devices that you can actually view, see health status, and many of them updatable as well. All the video conferencing devices updatable through the Sync portal. We also call out things like the provisioning packages. So believe it or not, I still have customers that will individually go in and remote into computers and install Logitech Sync app on their room computers one by one. So just know that you don't have to do that. We do have a provisioning package that can be downloaded directly from your Sync portal tenant. Most of you are already familiar with that, but I think it's worth repeating. Update channels, we're doing some pretty interesting things with update channels, giving you the ability to create your own update channels, but we also have something new on that front that I'm going to talk about in a second. And then you guys are familiar with kind of the overview of the simplified workplace management. That's just being able to see health status of all your rooms, your particular devices, whether they're plugged in, online, and ready to go. And then group visibility settings and updating. I'm going to be talking more about this, but you do have the ability to set settings at a device level. So for example, for 50 rally bars at once. And then as always, we have some extras in the Sync portal, one of which I'm going to be talking about today, which was just released, that do require either Sync Plus, we're moving to Sync Essentials is going to be kind of the new thing that's going to include a lot of this, but Logitech Select is still our premier service package. So I think it's worth acknowledging that, there's not quite a single pane of glass for example, for measuring call stats, for provisioning devices to Microsoft, but also for managing all the different device settings and updates all in one single pane. Now, we know that through Teams Admin Center, you can update your CollabOS devices, your Teams from on Android devices like Tap Scheduler, Rally Bar, Tap IP, etc. But Teams Admin Center is still missing a lot of those device settings, especially the bulk device settings that give you some extra capabilities. So it's really best to think of this as service portal versus device portal, right? And they do have some overlap, but our customers live in both, right? So we fully acknowledge that, Sync is not going to necessarily replace Teams Admin Center or Pro Management Portal for everything if you're Microsoft customers, or ZDM for the Zoom folks. But we're getting closer and closer where I don't have to switch over to the service provider's portal that often anymore. Some of the key feature sets, again, this is just a quick overview. Most of you are already very familiar with this, but first and foremost, you got to create some rooms, right? And begin provisioning devices to those rooms. So you'll see over on the left-hand side, this is what a room might look like. You can see the rooms online. Got a Rally Bar, Tap IP, Tap Scheduler. You can see Insights is turned off right now. We'll talk about how to turn that on at a bulk level, right? So being able to enable Insights on, again, using the example of 50 Rally Bars at one time. And then, of course, monitoring, just being able to see the health status. I cleaned up my lab before taking this screenshot, just so I wouldn't have any red dots to show you, so that you guys would think I was on top of it, which I am most of the time, but sometimes some things get unprovisioned and re-provisioned. I think it's worth calling out the activity log. This is something that, I think people are aware of, but maybe not using to its full potential. In the example here, you can see exactly when I may have turned off my room, unplugged a device, plugged it back in. So for example, let's say you've got a roommate and you've got a Rally Plus connected to it, and you're having issues with your Rally Plus. You can go in and first look at the activity log to see when that Rally Plus system disconnected and maybe then turned around and reconnected. I can also see and ensure that my devices are doing that. For example, my Teams from on Windows computer doing that nightly reboot that it's supposed to do by looking in here. And typically what I'll see is it goes offline for 2 or 3 minutes and comes back online. So this really is meant as a kind of first line of defense for troubleshooting your conference rooms and devices in those rooms. So we talked a little bit about advanced device management, bulk device management. Again, this is by device as opposed to by group, but it does allow for quite a few different things. We call out being able to, for example, enable speaker view. So there are definitely ways in the Sync portal to get creative, filter out all the rooms that say have a Rally Bar Mini with a site connected, and then set those to speaker view so that you're always able to utilize site, for example.
And on that note, Josh, because the question came up, so you can also, I see that toggle switch because that came up with site as well. So might as well answer that while you're covering that. You can also disable the room view, as we refer to as the picture-in-picture, right? So this is again a great example where IT can just do this without having to be in the room. So.
Yeah, and again, to Pike's point, you can do this device by device. So just turn off the picture-in-picture in one conference room, say a boardroom where the executives don't like the picture-in-picture, but you can also disable picture-in-picture on all of your Rally bars at one time if you'd like to. So that's really what this advanced device management is about. I also want to call out that we've added some things that until I started preparing for this call, I guess I didn't really realize, right? For our room occupancy, for example, insights. I can turn insights on as long as I've assigned select licenses or Sync Plus licenses to all of the Rally bars that are affected. I can enable insights on all of those devices at once rather than having to go through and individually enable insights. And then you'll have some options for always on for the room occupancy. There's a few other options there. So update validation and cascading. So this really gives you the ability to control when updates become available for your devices in your environment, right? So you've got a mixture of Rally bars, Rally bar minis, huddles, Rally pluses, tap IPs. And let's say you want to keep all of those devices for now on a 1.11. We recently released 1.12 to the production update channel for CollabOS devices. But let's say that you're not quite ready to do that and you don't want any of your IT admins getting in there and doing it unbeknownst to you, right? So you could create an update channel to limit all of the devices in your Sync portal to a 1.11 version, for example. So this gives you, quite a bit of control over the updates that show available for your devices. You guys are familiar with Insights. It bears repeating that it does require a Sync Plus or Select license to be able to enable Insights. But once you do, the amount of data analytics and room analytics that are available to you is exponential, right? So just being able to get a quick snapshot, just from this snapshot, you can see that primarily these rooms are underutilized in terms of seat count and also in terms of just how often they get used, right? Because everything's in that lower left quadrant. There's a lot of other views where you can get much more granular, and I can show you some of that if we have time. With, my Rally bar was in a call from 9:30 to 10 a.m. on Tuesday. I was in my office here standing in front of my Rally bar for a 7-hour period on Wednesday, right? So you can get pretty granular with how your rooms are actually being used. And what many people don't know is that we have that always on option for occupancy, which essentially turns it into an occupancy sensor, even when you're not in a video call. So some pretty cool features there. So I wanted to call out a couple of new features. Now I know these aren't yesterday new, but but some of them are last week new. So let's jump into those. Before I do, I wanted to quickly just let you guys know where you can find all of the Sync portal and Sync app release notes. So in our product hub, if you look in your Sync portal, you've got a little icon down here. Looks like a little infinity symbol. If you click on that, that will take you to the product hub. The reason I really like that they took a lot of that information and put it into a product hub that's linked from your Sync portal tenant is because now as an SE, I'm not switching back and forth between my Sync portal and pro support, which I did quite often. I still do quite often, but much less than I used to because it's all kind of in that single pane. So this is, just one step that we took, and we talked about it when it came out, of moving a lot of the information, articles. All of our release notes now are found in the product hub. If you try to go view them in the pro support site, it'll send you back to the product hub. So it's best to always kind of start with the product hub for release notes, and Sync app and Sync portal are no exception. So real quick, one of the new things that we're now offering is a group provision code. I remember back in the day having conversations with customers on calls, and they were just trying to get best practice for what's the best way to provision, say, 20 rooms if we're going to do a deployment. And the advice that I used to give back then, and maybe other SEs did this as well, was to name your rooms, and then maybe have, if you're Zoom customers, maybe have the Zoom activation code in there. But then you also have the Sync portal provision code, right? So you'd have a spreadsheet of 20 rooms with 20 different provision codes. This group provision code concept is pretty interesting in that, number one, I can see it from a couple of different places. You can see my group here over on the left, and I'm just clicking on the three dots and I can pull up the provision code that way. I can also do it through settings for my conference rooms and have the group provision code right there. What that essentially does is if I have a device that's just coming online, not provisioned to the Sync portal yet, and I use the group provision code, it will actually create a new room and throw only that device in the room. And then once you have all your devices in there, then you begin to move those devices to the appropriate rooms, right? Or maybe you use the placeholder room and you just rename it and set the seat count and add some more devices to it, right? So this gives you the ability to just, for example, an installer, you just have them take a little note on their phone or hand them a quick piece of paper that has the group provision code so they don't have 20, 30, 40, 100, 150 different provision codes that they need to manage. Something else that's fairly new, not extremely new, but we now have the production teams update channel. Another conversation that I had with customers at times is, what should I use to update my CollabOS devices if I'm running Teams Room on Android, for example, right? Do I use the Teams Admin Center or should I use the Sync portal? Now the question, is I think less relevant with the creation of this this update channel, and this is available to everyone, by the way. You can go turn this on and make it available, but this is going to provide, as it says, Teams Room on Android certified versions. So these are CollabOS versions that have been validated by Microsoft, and it would then, again, prevent this rally bar from updating to the newest 1.12 version because it hasn't been validated by Microsoft yet, right? So I know at times some of my customers were getting into this kind of catch-22 situation where they would contact Microsoft. Microsoft would tell them, well, you're not on the latest supported version. No, in fact, they're on the next CollabOS version up, but Microsoft hasn't validated that version. So Microsoft support was giving some of our customers a hard time about some of these things. This can prevent that, though, for you. And then the latest and greatest feature, and I think the one that all of us SEs are probably the most excited about, is this remote UI feature. As a lot of you know, we do still have an integration with GoToResolve. So just FYI, if you use GoToResolve, you've paid for licenses to do remote UI. That is not going away, to my knowledge. But what we are now doing is adding our own remote UI service. And then we'll get into some of the requirements. But what this allows you to do is basically utilize local network access. So local network access has to be enabled here to basically go into the device as if I'm sitting in front of the tap and touching on the tap. I tried this out yesterday by actually provisioning my tap scheduler to the Teams admin center with the email alias. So I provisioned it to Sync portal. I enabled local network access. I went into the remote UI and I was provisioning it to Teams admin center from this computer rather than having to turn around and go back and type it in on the scheduler. So this definitely has a lot of different use cases, things that you could do with it. And then, you know, I know folks like Microsoft are now releasing remote desktop within the Pro Management portal. I think this couples really nicely with the story from Microsoft on the Pro Management portal side for Windows Teams rooms, with Teams Room on Android now being able to do remote UI as well.
Can you elaborate on the remote UI from a CollabOS perspective? Because the question that came in was basically Sync portal remote control management coming soon for Rally Plus devices, question mark. And I think we need to elaborate that that is already supported with Roommate, but just throwing it back to you, Josh.
Yes, that's a great question. So what you would end up doing is remote UI for the Roommate, not for the Rally Plus, right? The Rally Plus just a USB plug and play system, if you will. But I'm going to actually go a little more in depth and show you a demo of this as well. These are just some quick screenshots, and I wanted to make some bullet points so you guys can kind of see what's needed to actually set this up and start using it today. So again, CollabOS 1.12 or higher. That's now available in the production update channel. Came out in beta, I think, what, a couple weeks ago, guys, something like that. And then, as I mentioned, it does require local network access to be enabled. I found this out the hard way by clicking on remote UI, and it took me nowhere. I immediately went back into the Sync portal, enabled the local network access, clicked on the remote UI again, everything was fine. And then it does require either Logitech Select or Sync Essentials license applied to the room. We also have a 30-day free trial offer. So if you don't have Select, you don't have Sync Plus, Sync Essentials, you can still try out this remote UI feature. And I've heard from some of the other SEs, the 30-day timer starts as soon as you start your first remote UI session on that device. So you get 30 days to play around with it, kind of decide if this is of value to you and your teams internally, and then move forward with purchasing Select licenses if it is. And then it is available for appliance mode only. It kind of goes without saying, but I've gotten this question a lot on customer calls, which is, where's your remote UI for Windows? We didn't bother making a remote UI for Windows. The market's pretty flooded. There's lots of different folks out there already doing this. I personally use TeamViewer for my lab devices, but Pro Management Portal now is offering remote desktop support as well. So just know that this is only for appliance mode. So Teams Room on Android, Zoom Room on Android, even Google Meet on Android, which I didn't think to include in there. And then, as I mentioned before, GoToResolve still going to be offered. If you're utilizing that today, don't fret. We're still going to be offering GoToResolve. In fact, whenever you set up the remote UI, it will want you to pick Logitech Sync or GoTo. All right, so let's jump in and do a quick little demo. I wanted to show you guys a couple of the things that I talked about in this slide. So first of all, going in and talking about the Teams production update channel. So if we go into settings here and we go into update channels, you can see that we've got our production update channel, we've got a beta update channel, and it lists the number of devices that are in that. Then we also then have this Teams production update channel. So you can see right now, we don't have too many devices in here, mostly because these are SE devices. Most of us are, well, a lot of us are putting our rooms even in beta update channels to get releases sooner, to begin playing around with some of the new features. But if you're looking for Microsoft validated CollabOS versions, this is the place to do it, right? And then let's say I wanted to, let's see. Let's say I wanted to add this one. Oh, let's see. I don't think I'm doing that right. Let me go back here. So actually where I would end up doing this is I can go in here, and then right now this particular, you can actually see that this is running Microsoft Teams Room on Android. And then if I want to change the update channel, I could do this for a group of devices. So like all my Rally Bar minis, but I just have one Rally Bar mini, one Rally Bar. So I would go in by room and then just change this to the production Teams update channel, which you can actually see if I clear this and I go into mine, you can see that my Rally Bar huddle is already in the production Teams update channel. I wanted to deep dive into insights as well a little bit. Now, my lab isn't great for this, although I do have some meeting usage. I've got a 2-year-old that comes in and constantly starts up ad hoc calls on my Zoom room. So I get quite a bit of meeting usage, unbeknownst to me until I look at this. And so I want to go and click on all groups here and show you guys. So this is real data. These are real devices, right? What I was showing you earlier is kind of a demo tenant. This is also a demo tenant, but real devices that are actually being used. And then I can start kind of filtering this out where I see, oh, this is the #1 utilized room right here, right? So you can kind of see what has the highest percentage. In fact, I'm towards the top because of my 2-year-old, which is kind of funny. So I've got a Rally Bar Mini here that's now running Teams from on Android, also a Rally Bar that's running Zoom rooms, and you can kind of see meeting usage versus seat usage. Now, if I want to drill in a little bit further, I do this quite a bit actually. So let's take my Rally Bar, for example, because it had quite a bit of info. Now I'm breaking it down just by one room, right? So I'm seeing average meeting usage, 5%, meetings without video, 50%, right? It's giving me my seat usage, but then I can get even more granular. So let's look back at last week. I'm probably giving myself away a little bit here, but you can kind of see when I'm standing right here at my desk, right? And a lot of this is not in video calls, but so all the gray is showing times when I'm standing in the room, but I'm not actually getting into a video call. All the purple is showing you when I'm actually in a call, right? So this begins getting pretty granular based on 30-minute increments of how this room is actually being used. Is it being used with video, without video? Is it being used at all? Is it being overutilized, right? Do we see it booked solid from 6 a.m. until 6 p.m., for example, right? So, so this gives you quite a bit of information that becomes very useful, not only for facilities, but also your IT admins, just knowing which rooms to maybe prioritize over others based on just the sheer amount of usage they're getting. We talked about that group provision code. I thought I'd just quickly show you where it is so I can access it here. And this would, again, this is just going to add, I think it showed up like room 8, right? And my tap scheduler showed up in there by itself when I used the group provision code. So there's the group provision code to provision any device specifically to this Josh S. Office group that I created, which is really a subgroup. Or again, I can go in here, device settings, there it is. So there's the group provisioning code for you guys that we talked about earlier. So let's dive in and talk about remote UI, because I know that's really what you guys are waiting to see. So this is my Rally Bar. You can see if my Rally Bar needs an update, my tap IP needs an update, but right now I am on 1.12.241. So once you upgrade to 1.12 on one of your Rally Bars, any of your CollabOS devices really at this point, you're going to have this start remote UI access session. Now, I will also just quickly call out, if you access it, if you just go to local network access, which is this is going to take me to local network access, the access code doesn't pre-populate from here. It only pre-populates from here. Just something to take note of if you're wanting to play around with this. So then I'll go ahead and log in via local network access. And then the very first thing you see now is remote UI access, right? So you can see, and it actually puts a picture of what I have here. So I've got a Rally Bar. It's dual screen. It's really just single screen with a headless EDID minder. And then if I hit start session, that access code is already pre-populated. Again, if I just click on local network access and go in that way, you'll see the remote UI access, but the access code will not be pre-populated for you. There is a way to go in here and actually grab it, right? So right there, remote UI access code, if I did it the other way around, right? So just know that this icon makes it is more efficient, a little quicker. So let's go ahead and connect here. Nope. May need to use a different device here. Let me try my Rally Bar Mini. I think everything went to sleep actually. All right. See if I can get my Zoom room back up here. There we are. It just fell asleep. So now you're seeing what I would show on dual displays. Again, you're just seeing the one behind me here. The other thing worth noting is like GoToResolve, it's got that green bar around my TV. So if I'm sitting in the room, I can see remote UI access session in progress, meaning someone is remotely controlling this space. Just so people don't get freaked out that maybe you're spying in on them or something. And then with this, I've actually got a TAP IP connected. So if you had a TAP Cat5e connected, you'd actually see that down here. So if I want to access the TAP, then I can go in and do a remote UI session with that as well. So now this is the TAP IP for that same Zoom room that you were just seeing over here, right? And if I needed to, for example, this was just, I'd selected Zoom as my service provider, but I hadn't yet entered the activation code. I can now do that remotely via remote UI access. So let's say I just wanted to get into the settings here. I have the ability to do that. Of course, you've got local network access and a whole host of other things that you can use. I can start a call. I could join a Microsoft Teams call, enter the meeting ID here, behind this. So again, this is just like I'm sitting right in front of my TAP, right? It is just worth noting that TAP Cat5e would show up under the Rally Bars remote UI session. TAP IP would have its own remote UI session to access the room controller. And then one other thing that I just wanted to quickly show you with the bulk device management settings. I skipped over that part, but I do want to go back and just quickly talk about it. So if I go into the dashboard here, and actually I'm going to look at all of AMR just because I only have one Rally bar. But in AMR, we have 30 Rally bars. So if I go through this, you guys saw some of the screenshots, right? Number one, I can update a bunch of devices at once. I've got 3 devices in production that could be updated right now if I wanted. And then 4 that I could schedule out for later. What I like to use bulk device management for is this, though. So being able to enable right sight, set a specific camera framing mode on all of my Rally bars, changing the framing speed, but
Yeah,
then
and that came
audio
up, Josh,
settings.
on
Yeah.
site. So this is perfect. Thank you for showing this, because the other question I already answered it, but I think it's important for the entire audience while Josh is showing this, right? Some, depending on the users and the type of meeting, this was, I guess, with primarily C-suite execs, you may want to have the transition speed of sight not be default. So you can actually, under, the framing speed, you can set that to slower. And you can do that for every single room or a group of rooms, right? So this just makes IT's life so much easier, right? We love to service the people in a room and give them great experiences, but these are great experiences for IT, just making it much more scalable. So it's a great feature where you can adjust that. Last part, Josh, can you also just briefly kind of speak to how this is a little bit different, the UI access? I know we transitioned, but I think one of my experiences from a wow factor is the almost no latency. Like when you turn on the camera, any of the changes, they're almost instantaneously, because this is a local access that, of course, you can remote into.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say that we were all just talking about this before we jumped on this call, that feels like it is slightly less buggy than GoToResolve as well. So we've all really enjoyed demoing it lately. And yeah, I don't know that there's too much more to say about that other than I really like it. Just even in my own lab, it's become pretty helpful, where I'm not having to be like, oh, I got to grab my tap scheduler and pull the cable out a little bit so I can start typing in the email alias to provision it to the Teams admin center. I did all of that remotely through remote UI yesterday. So pretty helpful for me.
You can provision it, right, Josh? Because you have end-to-end access, like Zoom ZDM, I can access this too remote. But what if I need to look under the hood? This is still like the interior of the car. If I need to get to the engine, you can do that, right? Just using some different terms. That's a huge benefit. You can provision your Teams room. All of that can be done, and once you have LNA enabled with remote access. Thanks.
Yeah, I think back in the day, first thing you did was activate your Zoom room or Teams room, then worry about all the sync stuff. Guess what I would tell you is maybe worry about the sync stuff first, turn on local network access, and then you can provision all your devices to either the Teams admin center or ZDM later on down the road.